Okay, that's good. Okay, so we're in chapter 6 today, and story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. This is the only miracle that's recorded in all four Gospels in the Bible: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's the only one. So it's pretty significant, the fact that all four Gospels only recorded this one instance. But I think it's probably a big deal because in a lot of miracles, Jesus would heal somebody or do something for an individual that would impact them and their family. But this was a lot of people involved, thousands of people involved in this one miracle. And I think, they probably would all go back then and tell all their friends and family, their neighbors and stuff about what had happened. And, people were probably talking about it and they're saying, yeah, I was there, it really happened. I saw it with my own eyes. I had the food, so this was probably his biggest, as far as the amount of people involved. It was a famous miracle here. So if you go back and look at it in the other Gospels, there's other details that aren't recorded in John's version here. He has different things he emphasizes compared to the other ones. So just going back to fill in the gap here, it says in the first verse, it'll say, after these things. So there's kind of a jump there. If you remember, we talked about that Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, and the leaders were actually looking to kill him at that point. They wanted to kill him for healing the man on the Sabbath, and then saying that, calling God his Father and things, making himself equal with God, it said. So on the one hand, he has the Jewish leaders that are looking to kill him, but also we had talked about that Herod had beheaded John the Baptist not long ago. And so here, Jesus had sent out his apostles 2 by 2 into different surrounding cities and towns, and he gave them authority, it says, to cast out demons, to heal. They were preaching the gospel. So they've been out on this little missionary, trip here, whatever, going to different towns, and now they're all coming back together, and they're going to share what they've been up to and all the stories from all the healings and all the miracles and signs and things. And so we've got, on one hand, like I said, that Herod had killed John the Baptist, and he's hearing about all these miracles and things, and he actually thinks John has raised from the dead at this point, and he's getting nervous that he thinks, something's coming for him now because, this guy has raised. So he's kind of wanting to go after Jesus himself on the one hand. He's got the Jewish leaders over here that want to kill him. He's got all these crowds of people that have seen all these miracles and stuff now, and it's kind of just overwhelming. I think at this point he wants to take his disciples, and they just want to go rest. They want to go out into the wilderness, have some space, let things kind of calm down a little bit, just have some alone time, just to kind of recover from all this. So it says, after these things, Jesus went over the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias, and a great multitude followed him because they saw his miracles, which he did on them that were diseased. So like I said, he's been doing these miracles and preaching all this time, and he's been gaining popularity through this, and people now want to come see him, they want to come hear him, they want to be healed, so they're still coming. So it says, and Jesus went up into a mountain, and there he sat with his disciples, and the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was nigh. So we've talked about the Passover before, how that began in Egypt, when God was bringing the people out of Egypt, and he did all the plagues and things. That was the beginning with Passover. Then we saw in a previous Passover that Jesus had gone to the temple there, and he'd actually flipped over the tables, and he was whipping the people who were selling there that were just making a business out of it, trying to cheat people and stuff, that they were turning the religion just into business and not honoring God's house. And so that had happened on a Passover. So here we are at another Passover. As we said, that Jesus' ministry lasted for 3 years approximately. So we have, I believe this is 1 year prior to his Passover, where he's actually going to be crucified. Mm-hmm. So here he is again. It's close to Passover. All these Jews are here now. They're going. They found out where he's at, and they're coming to find him in the wilderness. And as they're going through towns, they're actually telling other people to come. They're finding out, and the crowd's just getting bigger. So at this point, they have this huge. It says a multitude. They come to the wilderness here, and it says here in verse 5, when Jesus lifted up his eyes, he saw a great company come unto him, before I finish that verse, if you go back to the other books, it'll talk about it. It says Jesus saw them and had compassion on them, and he chose to do more healings. He wanted to preach. He preached the kingdom of heaven to them, and so that he didn't want to send them away. But after a while, his disciples come in, his apostles, and they say, it's getting late. These people have a long way to go. Send them home so they can get something to eat. So that's where it picks up here. It says in the rest of verse 5, he saith unto Philip, whence shall we buy bread that these may eat? And this he said to prove him, for he himself knew what he would do. So he already knows what's going to happen here, but he's kind of teaching and showing his disciples something when he asks this question. And Philip answers him. He says, 200 penny worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take a little. So that means about 8 months' wages. So if you took 2/3 of your pay from the whole year and said we couldn't buy enough food for them to all just have a little bite, with that much money. And so one of the other disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, says to him, there's a lad here which hath 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. So there's a little boy, he's brought his lunch or something, he's still got 5 barley loaves, which is pretty much the cheapest kind of bread they can have, and 2 small fishes. But he said, but what are they among so many? Basically, big deal, right? I mean, we have this little bit of bread and fish, and we have all these people, what good is it going to do? But at least he offered an answer here, So Jesus says, make the men sit down. Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down, in number about 5,000. Again, if you look in the other Gospels, it mentions that that's just the men, that there were also women and children. So this could number anywhere 10 to 20,000 people actually in this group. They just counted the 5,000 men approximately. So this is a really large group of people we have here with this little food. It says, Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down, and likewise of the fishes, as much as they would. So he's given this food out to them. He's breaking the bread. He gave thanks. He's passing it out, and it just keeps going. It doesn't end, right? He just keeps giving this food out, and there's going around to the groups, passing it out. And everybody eats as much as they want, right? And it says, when they were filled, he said unto his disciples, gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost. Therefore they gathered them together and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves which remained over and above unto them that had eaten. So people try to understand, what's the significance for 12 baskets here? It could be that it represents something about the 12 apostles, each picking up one, demonstrating to them, again, the power of God here, something about, that there was so much, left over that each one of them had. It could even be something about the 12 tribes of Israel, maybe, that it goes back to, and about that it says the fragments that remain. It could be about gathering these 12 tribes. But I think, again, here it says that nothing be lost. That actually is in the second half of this chapter that we're not going to get to tonight, where Jesus talks about anything the Father has given him won't be lost. And I think that that's probably significant, because we're going to be talking about Jesus as the bread of life. So we'll probably come back to that next time. But anyways, it says, then those men, when they had seen the miracle that Jesus did, said, this is of a truth the prophet that should come into the world. Again, and they're not saying yet that this is the Messiah. They're saying that this is the prophet that they've been waiting for, kind of like a prophet from maybe the Old Testament. It's interesting to me that they still maybe aren't recognizing, even after all these signs. You'd think, they would, and probably some people did. I mean, we've seen in other places where people were following him and recognizing him, but it's interesting to me here that after all these signs and wonder, healings and this feeding all these people, that they still only recognize him as a prophet. So it says, when Jesus therefore perceived that they would come and take him by force to make him a king, he departed again into the mountain himself alone. So at this point, he's at the height of his popularity. He has just fed, maybe 20,000 people. He healed the sick people. So everybody is so excited about this guy. They're coming from all over to find him and hear him and see him. Because up till now, as I said, he's been doing these big miracles he's been giving the people. Obviously, he's feeding them and stuff. He's kind of a, what you would think like a politician that's going to promise to give free, health care, free food, free, food stamps. They'll give free education, free everything, right? And people are, yeah, that's my guy right there, right? Everybody wants, if they're getting free stuff. But here, like I said, that they see Jesus, they want to make him a king. They want to make him a king by force. And that's not his purpose right now. He's not here this time to be this king, to overthrow the government or anything. He comes back later as a conquering king. But right now, he's just here as this servant, as this sacrifice, right? To be the sacrificial lamb. So he leaves again. He goes up into the mountain by himself so he can get some time apart here and pray, it says in the other one. And it says, when even was now come, his disciples went down into the sea and entered into a ship and went over the sea toward Capernaum. And it was now dark, and Jesus was not come to them. So it's late, they're in the boat. They probably thought he was going to come back, but he didn't. So they're sailing out toward Capernaum, and nobody's seen Jesus. And it says, the sea arose by reason of a great wind that blew. And so at this point, they have sails on their boats, but the wind is coming, and it's the waves are kicking up and stuff, and they have to actually take the sails down here because it says next that they're going to be rowing. And it says they had rowed about 25 or 30 furlongs, which is about 3.5 miles. It says they see Jesus walking on the sea and drawing nigh unto the ship, and they were afraid. So can you imagine that you're in this sea, it's like getting real choppy, all these waves, it's nighttime, and you're rowing, and one of your buddies says, I think I see something coming, right? And can you imagine me, one of these guys is looking at me, what are you talking about? And yeah, it looks like a man walking. What do you mean a man walking? And they start getting freaking out, and it says in the other Gospels that they think it's a ghost coming, which you probably would, right? Because people can't walk on water, of course. And so they see him coming, and they're probably saying, okay, we got to get out of here. And he said, well, where are you going to go? We're on a boat, in the middle of a storm coming or something. You can't go anywhere. So yeah, they're getting pretty scared. But then Jesus calls out, he says to them, it is I, be not afraid. And they calm down. It says, then they willingly received him into the ship, and immediately the ship was at land whither they went. So they let him onto the boat. Actually, there's another part to this story. Again, if you go back to one of the other Gospels, where Peter even calls out to him and says, Lord, let me come to you. And he even walks out on the water until he starts getting afraid, and then he starts sinking and says, Lord, save me. And, he says, you of little faith. So there's a whole nother interesting part there. But this verse 21 here, it's interesting to me. In the other Gospels, it doesn't record anything miraculous here, but the way I read this, it seems to be that another big miracle is taking place, right? It says that immediately the ship was at land whither they went. So they were right in the middle of the sea, right? In the middle of all this wind and waves, and immediately it says they're at the land now. So it seems to be saying that they just sort of teleported, like a sci-fi movie or something, that they were here and now all of a sudden they were there. And I don't know. It doesn't mention anything about this walking on water or this ship teleporting thing. It's not really mentioned again. It seems to be that it was only meant for the apostles there, because it doesn't come up again. They don't talk about it with any of the crowds of people, nothing, So it seems like it was a sign for them. And I think that that's a fair judgment here, because there's a story about Philip when he is preaching. He's sent to preach to the Ethiopian eunuch and baptize him, and then he's immediately transported out of there just the same way. He's teleported. It's just there 1 second and gone the next, right? So I think that's what it's saying here, and I think that's pretty incredible. They've just had they've been watching Jesus heal people. Now they've seen him break these bread and fish into pieces and feed 20,000 people. Now they see Jesus walking on the water. Now their boat is teleported. It's like they are just seeing all this power of God, like one after another, right? Just incredible, right? And I think, that kind of speaks to our humanity here, because later on we'll still see where they have doubts and things, right? Where Judas is still going to betray Jesus, Peter is still going to deny him and stuff, and it's just kind of incredible after they see all this, it has something to do, like I said, in our humanity, where we, can see God move and work and answer our prayers, and yet when another problem arises, we still have doubts. We still question, is God going to fix my problems this time? Do we let our problems look bigger than God, that we can't see past the problem, and little God behind the, right?
Mm-hmm.
You understand? I think that, that's just something we do as humans. It's important, though, to see here. They saw all these incredible signs and wonders. Anyway, so then in verse 22, it says, the day following, when the people which stood on the other side of the sea saw that there was none other boat there, save that one whereinto his disciples were entered, and that Jesus was not with his disciples into the boat, but that his disciples were gone away alone, howbeit there came other boats from Tiberias nigh unto the place where they did eat bread after the Lord had given thanks. When the people therefore saw that Jesus was not there, neither his disciples, they also took shipping and came to Capernaum, seeking for Jesus. Basically, it all means they saw that the disciples left. They got on a boat and left. They knew Jesus wasn't with them, that he went off on his own. They saw that the boat was gone, and they don't know, where did Jesus go? He should still be here, right, if he wasn't on the boat. So they're looking for him. They don't see him anywhere. So there's these other boats that are coming close by. They decide to go get in these boats and go over to Capernaum so that they can look for Jesus there. So we're going to pick up the rest of this chapter the next time, because there's a lot. It's pretty long, and there's a lot to get into. But I did ask Anna to share with you guys tonight, so...
All right, guys. I just wanted to give 2 examples. So let's read again number 9. I'll read a different version of the Bible. It says, here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fishes, but how far will they go amongst so many? So look, I never thought of it, but when I was getting ready and I started reading this, I wanted to mention that, look, this boy, he gave everything he had. Everything. That was his lunch. He gave to the apostles, and apostles, they gave it to Jesus. So in our everyday life, it's the same thing. You don't need to have a lot to give to God. You can give your small to God, and he can multiply. And Adam asked me to give examples from real life, like from missions that happened to us. So there was this one time that we were serving in Honduras in an orphanage, and there was not enough money. Okay, and I was in California. Nobody told me about that. Okay, I was in California. So the missionaries over there, they didn't tell anybody. They kneeled down, prayed with the kids that, Lord, send finances. And at that time, I was the accountant for the Honduras orphanage project. So all of a sudden, this one day, it was regular Thursday, nothing special. And guys, I started getting phone calls after phone calls. Hey, we have a check for Honduras. Hey, the check was lost for Honduras and it was found. How we can send it to you? Hey, I have cash. I need to give it to you. Will you be in church? Like from a different church, people sent us money. And I, like literally guys, in one day, I received like $1,100. And I couldn't understand, like, what's going on? What's happening? Like, how come I'm like nonstop getting money for this specific project? And at that time, we had like about 10 different missions that we were in charge of. And I was like, why it's just for that? So I called the missionaries there and I said, hey guys, like, what's going on over there? I keep on like getting this money nonstop, like all day long, phone call after phone call. And they said, it's because the orphans were praying. So it really touched my heart that sometimes you can think that whatever I'm giving to the Lord, maybe one of you is doing posts on Instagram, right? And you can think to yourself, well, I'm not like this major preacher. I don't preach to 1 million people. I tell Adam, like, how come my views are not 900,000 on my videos? But you see, God does not look at it like that. Every single one of us, we have our ministry, this small talent. Some of us, we help financially. Some of us, as you guys like, you play in the church on musical instruments, or you do the Instagram post. You don't know until you get to heaven how many people you guys touched with your ministries. And it's the same as with this boy and with his little talents that we've got. So if we, I believe, give everything that we have 100%, and I think that's what exactly we need to learn from God, how we can not like keep it, but use all our talents and ask God to use us 100% of our capabilities.